You good? Spock, you good? Okay, you hear what I'm saying? Okay? Just cool it, Spock. Cool it. Okay, we're not doing another Vulcan hello today. We're not just gonna attack them willy-nilly, just to look cool. Okay? Calm down. What is a quality of mercy? Is that anything like an errand of mercy? A bygone TOS episode with the plot similar to this one? This is an episode that solves a lot of problems. It comes out smelling better than it did when we went in, which is to say, we come out the other end of this having a few answers, a few less questions, and feeling a little bit better than we did. This is the final episode of Season 1 of Strange New Worlds. We finally made it to a quality of mercy. After having watched the episode, I'm not sure what the title really means. I'm also not sure it really matters in this case. This episode, like the Elysian Kingdom, is an episode with a plot that kinda doesn't matter. It's another one of these plots where, stop me if you've heard this before, one of our characters goes on a seemingly mental flight of fancy. They learn things, they do things in a not-so-real reality, and come out the other end having been the only person to remember it, right? Last time, in Strange New Worlds, it was Mbenga. Okay, he knew what happened in the missing time. In this case, our Captain Pike goes on a what-if scenario adventure all alone, spurned on by his future self. Your future self comes back to help your past self avert a bad future. Voyager Endgame, anyone? I'm not going to spoil what happens in Endgame, but it's kind of like this. And if I were to go through all the episodes that this is a derivation of, I would be spoiling an awful lot of Trek because this episode is extremely derivative. We're solving problems at the cost of having a derivative plot. Okay? Again, we're putting in, like we did with Memento Mori, we're putting in Balance of Terror into the microwave, warming it up, and trying to serve it again like it's new. This is Balance of Terror. This is Errand of Mercy. This is maybe a little bit of Yesterday's Enterprise. This is Endgame. And by God, this is Picard Season 2 again. Remember when I said during my reviews for Picard Season 2, I was explaining how, man, this plot, we could solve this whole thing in one decent episode of TOS. But instead we're stretching it out to a whole season. God, I'm sorry to keep bringing up Picard Season 2, but it really is that bad. Picard Season 2 is the worst season of anything I've ever seen. What happens in Picard Season 2? Spoiler alert, by the way, if you care. But in Picard Season 2, we go back in time to an alternate timeline to avoid a bad future. We've done that 1,000 times in Star Trek. But in this episode of Strange New Worlds, we go to an alternate timeline to try to prevent a bad future. And we get it done in one episode. Bing, bang, boom, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and we're done. And we get out the other end smelling like a rose. Sorta. A few key things in this episode may adversely affect our view of all Strange New Worlds to come, depending on how they do it. If you've seen this episode, you may know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, stay tuned. This episode introduces a lot of things, wraps up a few things, and hopefully sets the stage for future seasons of Strange New Worlds. We'll see what happens. I know there's going to be a Season 2. I'm pretty sure there's going to be. But I don't know when the date is. I also don't know when there's more Star Trek coming after this. It feels like we're at the end of a long odyssey, you see. A few months ago, they revealed the upcoming schedule for all Star Trek shows. we had the full slate of everything that was coming out this year, basically. And I think we're at the end of it. We did it. I didn't think we'd ever make it. I didn't think I would ever survive Picard Season 2. I didn't think I was going to make it, but I made it. We made it. And now we've come out the other end of Picard's, of, what am I saying, of Strange New Worlds Season 1, and I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We made it. But this time the tunnel was a lot more fun to be in than with Picard Season 2. So I know I've spent enough time meandering around, perhaps confusing you. Let's get down into Strange New Worlds season finale. Equality of Mercy. What's going on in this episode? What's the quality? What's the mercy? What's the of? Maybe scratch that last one. Alright, let's dig down deep. Well, I like episodes that get across what the routine of Starfleet is like. I like the boredom. I'd like an episode that was about boredom. I may be the only person who wants to see that, but this episode is about routine maintenance on outposts, okay? So we're on Federation side of the Romulan versus Federation neutral zone, fixing our security outposts, embedded into asteroids, meteors, and the like, okay? And how it works is that we're going to use in situ resource utilization, which is we're going to use the resources that are already there to power our mechanisms, okay? That being harvesters, drones, and whatnot, okay? And we're talking to one of the, what I assume is the commander of this outpost, Hansen Al-Sala, okay? And he's asking for reinforcements, he's asking for help, he's asking for what he's been trying to get for the last 5 years, which works out to be unmanned mining drones, cargo haulers, and probably other such security systems. He's interrupted by his son in a discussion with Captain Pike. His son, Ma'at Al-Sala. Curious, in this show we have two characters with a mysterious break in the middle of their first name. La'an Ma'at, Laanmaat. Just something I noticed. You see Captain, what did they call her? Belton? Something like that. That character who was seen in some kind of relationship with Pike in the first episode is back in the last episode of this season. You know, to kind of bookend it. And both ships are there. She's on the Cayuga. Pike is, of course, on the Enterprise. And we're helping out Hansen Al-Sala. Okay? But his son is one of the people that Pike believes he's going to kill in a future. A possible future scenario, I may add. Brought on by, if you've seen Discovery Season 2, touching a Klingon time crystal. That's right. I'm not going to get into it here, but Pike went to a Klingon moon called Boreth. He talked to Klingon monks, and they let him touch a time crystal, which lets you see the future, lets you see alternate timelines. I don't know how it all works. It's basically the magic plot crystal as far as I'm concerned, because it seems to just do whatever the plot needs it to do. This has got to be one of the more harebrained tools that we can use to see the future. I don't know. It's just magic. Anyway. He doesn't want to kill this kid, so he's thinking, how can I change the future? And you and I know that fate isn't real. So maybe you can change the future. Actually, we learn soon enough that anything he does to change this future ends up in creating a bad timeline, which is going to cause you to beg the question. It's been like 2 years since Discovery Season 2. Has anything else he's done since he's known his future caused something to go wrong in the timeline? Think about it for a minute. We know from the content of this episode that Pike will end up trying to save these cadets from the accident that he's involved in at the Academy. Fair enough. That's going to cause a bad future. Okay. He knew about this future years ago. Has he taken any actions now that he would not have taken otherwise, had he not touched the time crystal? If the answer is yes, we are in an alternate timeline. It's just that simple. Again, I hate bringing up Picard Season 2, but as soon as you involve time shenanigans, I just don't know what's going on anymore. Listen, time is a very important thing. It always moves forward. It's called time's arrow. It's always going forward. It is immutable. It is unchangeable. As soon as you mess with it, I don't know what's happening anymore, and it starts to dissolve tension. Speaking of tension, this episode, any tension that you may feel from the content of it, will immediately be evaporated away by the fact that you may notice that this is an elaborate vision. This episode is essentially a vision. Okay? What is real, what is not real, it's up to you. But maybe the emotions you take out of it are real enough for you. That depends. What I'm getting at is that there is a moment in this episode, early on, where he is visited by his future self. He is wearing the monster Maroon. Okay, you know, the big wraparound, the Wrath of Khan outfit, as some would call it. He's visited by himself, Pike, from, 20 years in the future, something like that? Kind of curious seeing Captain Pike in a monster Maroon, I must say. He's basically saying, what I just told you, is that, listen, you can't write that log entry, you can't write that message to that kid telling him to not join Starfleet, because that's going to be very bad. And you don't have to believe me, I brought with me a Klingon time crystal. Who do you think sent me? So sometime in the future, Klingon monks send Pike back in time somehow through the magic of plot crystals to make past Pike touch the plot crystal so that he can learn not to change his own future. Because fate is real. And no matter what he does, anything he does to change it ends up in this same bad future for one or more reasons. Because sometimes a certain character is the magical puzzle piece to complete the universe. In this case, that character is Spock, right? Because he's popular to us. For that reason, Spock has to be alive, and anything Pike does now to avoid the bad future for himself gets Spock killed? I mean, at the end of this episode, his future self basically says that Spock is the only hope we have at unification with the Romulans. Gonna have to press doubt on that one. Somehow I don't think the future is as defined as this episode wants us to believe it is. Again, I'm not really a time travel guy. Your mileage may vary. So Pike touches the time crystal, and he flicks back into an alternate reality. Okay, they're back at the outpost, and Hansen Alsala, the person we were talking to earlier, is on the outpost as it's attacked by the Romulans. And may I add, Ortegas this episode, what's going on with her? If you've seen this, you know what I'm talking about. When did she start to hate Romulans so much? Is she a historian of the Romulan War? I could have used a few more lines to kind of get me up to speed on that, but as it stood right now, I had no idea why she was so adamant that we just attack the Romulans. We didn't know who these attackers were, and she had already assumed it was the Romulans. These people we haven't seen in 100 years. And even then, we haven't actually seen them, if you know what I mean. But, suffice to say, the outpost is destroyed. And in a terrible-looking CGI nightmare, we see Hansen on view screen being blown out into space after it's exploded. And it looked terrible. Go check this out if you haven't seen this episode, but it's a black mark in an otherwise fantastic-looking episode, I'll say that. There's another ship coming in. Who do you think it's going to be? I guessed who it was. It's the Farragut, right? And if you know anything about your Star Trek history, you know that in the Prime timeline, by the way, canonized now, at some point Spock says Prime Timeline, or Prime World, okay, to refer to the correct timeline. It's in there now. It's canon, I guess. In this Prime timeline, which is what we're not in now, Kirk's first mission in space is on the Farragut. So I knew as soon as the Farragut showed up, and we're supposedly 7 years in the future in this vision, if it is that. Pike is still captain of the Enterprise, so who's captain of the Farragut? That's right, it's Captain James T. Kirk. The music swells because the music anticipates what's happening. I like it when the music reacts to the action, not totally anticipates it, because it makes it feel like it's breaking the fourth wall. The music knows who Captain Kirk is. Are we supposed to care? He's just a person, is he not? Maybe they should save the music for after he does something, but this episode is romantic in how it plays with its music and its visuals, so I want to give it a pass because I'm not totally heartless, and it did stir up something inside me, not gonna lie. So we're having a roundtable discussion. What do we do with the Romulans? They're leaving, okay? Now, I've seen some crazy stuff in Star Trek, but our idea to chase the Romulans further into the neutral zone and not arouse suspicion is to simulate their movements, action for action, so that we look like an echo on their sensors. Will that work? I mean, many cases in this episode, we have Kirk being shown to take charge of the situation, to offer the intuitive solution, only for it to either not work, or for it to work just based on pure luck because the idea sounds stupid. Kirk comes off with a real take-charge attitude. He really drives his plot along. He's making the tough decisions. And I have to wonder, these decisions are working just because we need them to work? They don't sound as smart as you think they may sound on first viewing. Take it from me as someone who's seen this episode multiple times. Kirk is voting to attack now. Spock, oddly, is voting to attack now. You may think that's odd, but I realize that we're in the Discovery timeline. And in the Discovery timeline, Vulcans are quite violent. If you remember the first episode of Discovery, I remember it like it was yesterday, and I wish I could forget it. The first episode of Discovery was called The Vulcan Hello. What's a Vulcan Hello? Well, Michael Burnham in that episode, in accordance with her Vulcan upbringing, she decides it's better to attack the Klingons now and not show weakness in the first episode of Discovery, leading to a war with the Klingons. Whoops. I would have said, I just wanted to jump into the scene right here and say, Spock, remember your sister? Yeah, your sister with about 40 million quotation marks around that word. Did she not start a war with the Klingons doing this exact thing? You good? Spock, you good? Okay, you hear what I'm saying? Okay? Just cool it, Spock. Cool it. Okay, we're not doing another Vulcan hello today. We're not just going to attack them willy-nilly, just to look cool. Okay? Calm down. Maybe the writers forgot. Maybe the writers just didn't remember Discovery. I wish I didn't have to remember it either. I want to forget it, but I can't. I was so excited to watch it. I had the popcorn out, and my jaw was on the floor. And not for a good reason. Save yourself the trouble. Don't watch any Discovery. Just watch this. It's fine. Regardless, we come up with an idea. Not we. This idea is entirely Kirk's idea. To allow the Romulans to fly into the tail of a comet so that we can see the displacement of the particles to find out where they are, because of course they have invisibility screens up. However, it looked to me like the Romulans were already flying into that tail. So if you thought the Romulans were flying into the tail of the comet to displace comet debris, revealing their location, it's something they were already going to do. Like, we would have just discovered that anyway. So Kirk's idea is just to let happen what was going to happen. And you, being the audience and being smarter than the writers, probably assumed that, well, if they're going into that trail, and they have invisibility screens, and presumably they know how those screens work, and they know their weak points, why would they be flying into the comet's tail? The answer is that's a trap. So, okay, they're trying to flank the Romulan ship on either sides of this comet in its tail, waiting for it to come in so they can see the displacement of the particles. Of course, this is wrong, and the cloaked ship reappears behind the Farragut and basically scuttles the Farragut. Whoops! So we beam over the crew from the Farragut onto the Enterprise, try to get them back to safety, and we have heated but not violent, argumentative but professional conversations between Kirk and Pike, and it's interesting to see this dynamic. This is really what I took from this episode. This is your nugget of yummy nougat at the center of this chocolate bar of an episode. Okay, you're getting to see the dynamic between two captains. You don't often see this, but it's essential to get an idea for command style. Okay, we need captains to act as themselves. We need unique approaches. It takes all kinds in order to create Starfleet. So you get to see the interplay between Pike and Kirk. Okay, Kirk wants to move forward. Pike wants to move back. Kirk is saying, "You were slow on the draw. Had you been firing to kill, we could have defeated them and saved these people on the Farragut." Maybe he's right. Maybe he's wrong. The fact of the matter is, there's no way to really know. Therefore, we have the debate. But it is inconclusive. We come away not as adversaries, but as two captains who are just trying to do the best that they can do. And had this been written worse, we would have had these two characters come across as villains to each other. Maybe we would have punched each other. If this was Kelvin, we definitely would have saw somebody get hit. But cooler heads have prevailed here on behalf of the writers and on behalf of the characters, because Pike and Kirk are still working together despite the loss of the Farragut. Okay. We do negotiate with the Romulans, similarly to what happened in Balance of Terror. No spoilers, but we do manage to get a seemingly amicable relationship together with the captain of the Romulan ship. Okay. We managed to get 2 hours to, quote, bury our dead and repair the ship. Okay, at which point, after 2 hours, we can restore hostilities. Haha, great. Now we cut to dialogue that is on the Romulan vessel. And I must say, the dialogue between the captain and his subordinates, I thought I was watching classic Trek. Something happened. Something clicked in my brain, and I just saw the way it was shot, the way they were talking to each other, just the way the makeup was done, and the acting and the delivery. For a brief moment, I thought I could have been watching TOS. Just squint, and you might think for a brief moment you were watching TOS. Great performances from the Romulans. Of course, how good can something be if it is a second order derivative of something, right? Like it's it's a derivative of a derivative of a derivative. We are a copy of a copy of a copy. How good can we literally be at this point, right? We're retreading old ground. Credit where credit is due, but this is not particularly new. Okay? Kirk has this idea as a backup plan that I wish he would have explained outright at the beginning, but because we need to be dramatic, we don't find how it works until the last minute. Okay? We wait till it gets down to the wire before we learn what Kirk was really planning. And I gotta mention something. Part of his plan is to take a shuttle. Pike, can I borrow a shuttle? He borrows the shuttle. We don't know what he's going to do. Backup plan. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I saw the shuttle come over the Enterprise. I saw it go to warp, and something clicked in my brain. Like I just felt this rumbling in my brain. I was like, "Whoa, what's happening?" You're not supposed to see a shuttle leave a Constitution class and then go to warp, because conventional wisdom indicates that the standard shuttle on the compliment on the Constitution class does not have warp capability. Normally, you cannot have a shuttle in this era go to warp. And then I said, well, wait a minute. We just seen 2 seasons of Discovery that, or before this, those shuttles warped. And I was thinking, wow, isn't that interesting? Discovery was so far off from TOS that it didn't bother me when the shuttles warped. I didn't notice. It was that far off. In the back of my mind, in my subconscious, I knew it wasn't TOS, so I didn't care if the shuttles warped. But something happened in this episode. The shuttle came out of the shuttle bay of the Constitution-class Enterprise. It went to warp, and it bothered me. Didn't bother me in Discovery, but it bothered me now, because in my mind, I guess, somewhere deep down, I was starting to think this was TOS. Which I guess is a testament to the fact that this is a lot better in Discovery. And it's a lot more inclined to play within technological limitations of the timeline that we're in and the time in that timeline. I must add, though, that in TOS, shuttles did not have warp capability unless otherwise stated. That was the assumption that we had gone with. Okay. There was a few episodes of TOS, 1 or 2, I think, where a shuttle had to be going at warp in order for the plot to make sense. So it was like soft canonized that some could do it, or it was used rarely and sparingly. I don't know. It's in my mind, a TOS shuttle cannot warp. I know a few moments in TOS seems to suggest otherwise, and in this, we just had it basically happen because this is technically Discovery Season 2.5 in some weird alternate way. But again, it affected me, you know. Also, the U.S.S. Farragut is now an unknown class of ship. Very nice ship, by the way. I like a good kit bash, as I pointed out in the previous episode. So disappointed with the Somber class, the Peregrine from, what was the episode? All Those Who Wander. This has got me satisfied. This ship quenched my thirst. We got a new, pretty cool Federation starship. I don't know if they explain what the class was, but maybe I'll be able to find out later. It looks like a TOS version of like a Miranda class, if you remember the Reliant from Wrath of Khan. I'm mentioning Wrath of Khan twice in this review, which is interesting. Previously, we had soft canonized the Farragut as being a Constitution class, although I don't believe that was ever actually said in TOS. I can't recall anyone referring to the Farragut as Constitution class. So I guess it was up for grabs. And if it was up for grabs, I may have made the same decision myself and made it a unique class of ship, but you could save both and make it something other than the Farragut. This is technically an alternate timeline, why not? You could have the people who wanted the Constitution class Farragut and whatever this is a different ship, and they could both be happy. But as per usual with modern Trek, we have to move forward at the expense of something. Newton's third law, right? We can't move forward without leaving something behind. There's modern Trek for you. Anyway, I'm sorry to get off on this tangent, but right at the last minute, we find out that Subcommander, the subordinate of the Romulan captain, has gone behind the back of the captain and has informed the Romulan fleet of what has happened here. This was originally supposed to be an operation to test the capabilities of the Federation. Incidentally, the Romulan ship in question got caught, okay? Because they needed to uncloak to fire their plasma weapon. Big oof. The fleet didn't want that to happen. So now they're being culled by the Romulan fleet. Indeed, the Romulan Praetor, who I don't believe is named in this episode, is speaking on behalf of the Romulan Star Empire to Pike on how they are going to cull this ship for their failure, as is their customs. The ship in question that had originally attacked the outpost as a destructive reconnaissance operation broke formation and was subsequently destroyed by the Romulan fleet for their incompetence, we'll say. Okay? I don't know what happened to the person who betrayed the captain and informed the fleet. Maybe the Praetor decided to spare his life. Suffice to say, maybe there's not a lot of respect for the chain of command in Romulan starships as there are in the Federation. That being said, Erica Ortegas, who I mentioned earlier, was flagrantly waylaying the captain's orders and offering input when it was not asked for, undermining the perception of trust the crew had in the captain at many occasions in this episode. Why don't we shoot the Romulans? Why don't we just go after him? It's the Romulans. Captain, what are you doing? You're making a mistake. Pike says, stand down! And he regained some cred with me, you know? He lost some cred. This season, I saw Pike on numerous occasions stand down himself. A lot of moments where I said, Pike, do you have anything to add? Someone is clearly bad-mouthing you. Someone is wrong. Someone is throwing shade at the Federation. Do you have anything to add here, Pike? And I've seen Pike back down on numerous occasions, and now he's not backing down. Too bad it had to happen in a vision. But he does get Ortegas to stand down, and Ortegas was way out of line in this episode, I think. Leanne has been way out of line. Ortegas has been way out of line. And I like this from Pike. I like the control. This is an episode where Kirk is shown to be in command of the situation. Whenever Kirk and Pike are on screen together, Kirk is in command. It's amazing to think that, but the Enterprise is the flagship. You would be forgiven for thinking the Farragut was, the way Kirk is acting in this episode. I like it. Okay? It's tough, it's firm, but it never goes over the line with Kirk. Pretty good. Good performance, I will say that. We'll get into what I think about Kirk in this later, but performance-wise, pretty good. Just from a general point of view, Kirk arrives hauling all of the mining vessels. You may remember earlier we came at the beginning of this episode to arrange self-controlled autonomous mining vessels, right, to this outpost to bolster its defensive and resource gathering capabilities. Guess what? Kirk is saying, well, we haven't seen the Romulans in 100 years. They haven't seen us in 100 years. They don't know what our ships look like. And he comes back to meet the Romulan fleet that has arrived. He comes back with the armada of Delta-class Starfleet attack ships, which are just cargo and mining vessels. And what's the problem, okay? If you watch this closely, you may realize that Kirk told Pike what he was doing over ship-to-ship communication, or shuttle-to-ship communication, while presumably the Romulans were listening in on everything they were saying. And I was just thinking, Kirk, why did you bring these ships here and then tell me what they were for? And now you're telling me the plan is to lie to the Romulans and tell them that these are attack ships when they're clearly not. And you're saying this over ship-to-ship communication. Didn't we just earlier intercept communication from the Romulan vessel that allowed us to see into their bridge? I wonder if they're doing that to us. And I wonder, Kirk, if you just revealed our plan to them. Why didn't you tell me what you were going to do earlier? You took the shuttle to do this scheme, this cockamamie scheme, to pretend that these mining ships were Starfleet attack ships, autonomously controlled by you, I might add. And you chose not to tell me how this plan would conclude until after you arrived? Wouldn't it have been better to get this plan out of the way? By the way, better for the episode too, to not have the audience know exactly what was going on the whole time until the very end when we wrap it up and have Kirk say, good job selling that to the Romulans that I brought these ships here. right? You called them Delta-class fighters. That was so cool. See how that would have been a little bit more dramatic? But instead we have Kirk revealing over communications what the whole plan was, after the fact. I think this plan probably should have been thought out beforehand. Not to say it would work. I don't think the Romulans would have bought this. In my estimation, Romulan sensors could probably figure out that these mining ships were not armed exactly. We can kind of do that. In Starfleet, we can kind of tell when a ship, based on its configuration, and when we scan it, we can kind of tell if it's carrying a lot of exotic matter. That usually means weapons and things like that. We can kind of tell. But the Praetor decides, okay, we're going to attack. We're going to declare war. But let's skedaddle for now. So we do get into a fight. We do damage the Enterprise. That we do get hit by this plasma weapon again. But Kirk deftly brings the mining vessels between us and the Romulan ships to cover our escape. Kirk beams back to the Enterprise for a customary drinking scene at the end. I'm sorry things could have went better. Kirk offering a few backhanded compliments, as seems to be par for the course for this Kirk. And we do have a drink together, revealing, hey Kirk, why don't you tell me about yourself? Where are you from? I'm from Iowa, and my dad, George Kirk, was on the Kelvin, and then he moved to... If y'all seen Star Trek 2009, you know, in that alternate timeline, Kirk's father died on the Kelvin. This is putting the nail in the coffin once and for all. Kelvin is now deleted. That timeline, we are no longer in it. He just says it right there. His father survived to finish up whatever it was he was doing after the Kelvin. He moved to, and then it trailed off. By the way, I couldn't really hear what they said. I think it started with the T, but I think it was Tarsus. Yeah, so resolving problems, right? We do have a final scene, like between Pike and Future Pike. Future Pike in the Monster Maroon, the Wrath of Khan outfit, is looking at a framed photograph of him and Robert April, and they are wearing the correct uniform. They are wearing the Cage uniform. Why couldn't we get that in the show? They're wearing the right uniform. Look at the picture. I'll try to put it up here. Look at the picture. They're wearing the right uniform. So cool. The Monster Maroon we have to get here now is clearly just a repaint and a remodeling of the standard outfits we have for this season. It's got the yucky material on the shoulders, and it's got the plasticky look, and it just looks like cosplay. When we try to take that uniform and morph it into the Wrath of Khan uniform, and I'm not there for it. Maybe you thought it was cool. It definitely gets the idea across with the Monster Maroon, but it doesn't stick the landing. You see, when you watch Future Pike talking, you're looking at his head, you're looking at his badge, you're looking at his outfit, and, you know, as you do. And I'm just looking at this. Okay? That's all I'm looking at the entire time. I'm just looking right at that shoulder. What is it with modern Star Trek and the constructed shoulder? For those who don't know, in classic Trek, we wore like a sweater-style outfit that just sloped down over the shoulder and just hugged the shoulder all the way down, you know, like normal. But now, we have the constructed shoulder, which is like this, or something. Like everyone's walking around with these pointy shoulders because shirts are comprised of different panels, right? We create panels that are sewn together in such a way to create the shape of the shirt. And the constructed shoulder in modern Trek means that we have a unique panel for the shoulder section that causes it to puff out a little bit. Like it's kind of like that or something. Like it's kind of strange, but it's all I can look at. Maybe you guys can follow the plot. I follow the shoulders. Yeah. So we've wrapped this up. Pike touches the crystal. He goes back to his timeline, realizing, I guess I have to die. Because when the Enterprise was attacked that last time by these Romulans, it kind of killed Spock. As I said before, Spock is the magical puzzle piece to complete the universe. Wink, wink. So we can't have him die. I have to kind of die, and I have to be in that accident, and I can't change the future. Because according to future me, every time we change it, it ends up bad, and we end up in a war. Womp, womp, womp. I guess fate is real, guys, and we can't change it. Something else we can't change is the final scene of this episode. Remember how I said this was derivative? I left out one thing it was derivative of. This episode is derivative of Star Trek Lower Decks? Is Mark, what are you saying? Mark, what is you saying? What is you saying right now? This is derivative of that weird cartoon? Well, kinda, yeah. This season ends exactly the same way as Season 2 of Lower Decks did. We're arresting somebody. Season 2, Lower Decks, at the end. Spoiler alert. They arrest Captain. What's her name? Freeman? Captain Freeman? I can hardly remember now, even though I like the show. It's funny how you remember things you don't like, right? Things you like wash off you like water off the back of a duck, but when you hate it, it sticks in your fur, and you can't get it out. Oh, it's like mange. Picard Season 2. It's like mange. Discovery, it's like mange. However, at the end of Season 2 of Lower Decks, we arrest the captain. This time we arrest Una. We knew it was coming, and Captain Battelle, I believe her name was, is doing the dirty work. She doesn't want to do it, but she has to. And she comes equipped with security officers that, unfortunately, escort Una off the Enterprise into a penal colony, as it would seem. I have a feeling Pike isn't going to let this one slide. We'll see what happens in Season 2, as we will see what happens with the captain in Season 3 of Lower Decks. We're left in the same place that Lower Decks left us. What's going to happen to this person who was just arrested? Una, in this case, was arrested because she was an Illyrian, and therefore she is the result of genetic modification, which the United Federation of Planets considers to be cheating, and she never revealed it. She is a deceiver and a liar, and she should answer for her crimes. Sorry. I don't really like it. I don't like it as much as you don't like it. But she technically was lying about who she was. And she got through Starfleet with an unfair advantage, born of the fact that she lied about her heritage. I'm sorry she had to hide it, but her entry to Starfleet was born of a lie. We'll say that. I hope that in the following season we can resolve this, and we can find out something that's amicable for all parties involved. But as it stands right now, I have to take the correct legal position on this as someone representing Starfleet. I'm sure you understand. Next season, we'll see what happens, though. So that was the gist of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 10, A Quality of Mercy. What are you saying? What are you saying? Did you like the episode? Did you like it? Did you like it? Did you like the episode? Did you like it? Was it good? Okay, go back and find the mice. Go get the mice in the ship. Okay, get going. Get going. Interrupting my reviews. I swear sometimes, okay? Well, now we gotta dig down into what the grandiose, all-encompassing problems with this episode are, okay? Plot, like I said, is kind of just nothing, because it's one of those plots that just seems to occur in an encapsulated moment of time and space that no one else remembers. However, Pike saw a Romulan in this episode. Pike is the only person who knows what a Romulan looks like, apparently, in the future. Kind of curious. What else is curious is Kirk. Kirk in this episode, I would venture to guess that audience reaction to Kirk is not going to be as warm or as favorable as the audience reaction to Anson Mount as Pike was. The linchpin to complete the crew of the Enterprise. So important to get this right, and I think they may have gotten it wrong. I know looking right is one thing, and acting right's important too. But I will say, while I enjoyed the performance, it did not feel like a Kirk performance. He doesn't look like Kirk. He doesn't feel like Kirk. Kind of doesn't act like Kirk. And this may be due to the fact that when we created the character of Pike for Discovery Season 2, maybe we didn't think we would get this far, because a lot of the things that people liked about Pike were just things that we kind of stole from Kirk. Let's be real. We just took the cartoon idea of Kirk, slathered it over Pike, and called that our new character. And now when the real Kirk shows up, the genuine article, we don't know what to do. Would it have killed him to learn some mannerisms? Would it have killed him to put on an affect? Would it have killed him to move around a little bit like Kirk? Would it have killed him to put on some weight? This Kirk is very thin, okay? Kirk, he's burly. He looks like he could pound me. This guy, the widest thing about his body is his head, I must say. And he just looked tiny. I mean, like, the acting is what's most important. But visuals, they gotta mean something too. So if we're making this show closer to TOS, shouldn't we go all the way with the visuals too? I hope that if this Kirk eventually replaces Pike in Station of Worlds, or, God forbid, we have a remake of TOS and we're using this actor, I hope he puts on maybe 30 pounds. I just gotta say. So it doesn't reflect positively on your franchise as a whole when you've kind of miscast Kirk. Let's not continue to review this based on what it should be. Let's review it based on what we had. And what we did have was a uniquely beautiful episode. Lighting reminiscent of TOS, Spock looking into his little viewfinder thing with the reflection of the screen on his eyes. Particles in space, casting light to the inside of the bridge. Super fun stuff. Okay? Again, we have a new ship class. This is getting like an A+ visually in my books. Music-wise, we must have used almost everything from TOS. The musical stings. Like I said, they're anticipating the action. I wish it could have been more reactive. But this was an audio feast, I must say. The emotional points, the action, the intrigue, the music follows it correctly, the Romulan theme is sneaking in, all kinds of TOS themes sneaking in. If you're here to listen, you're going to love it. Philosophically, it's not so certain and it's not so tightly put together. What is the question we're asking? Is it better to strike first? Sometimes there's things you can't change in life. Sometimes you just have to accept your fate. I prefer an episode that's well thought out philosophically and has an ending and a beginning that mesh together, you see, to create an entire moral whole, a philosophical core, as I say, upon which everything else can orbit. And this is a little weak. We're learning about maybe second-guessing yourself, maybe pacifying the enemy force is not always the best option. Maybe we need to accept our own mortality. Is that what we're getting at? Again, if I have to fish for it, it usually means it's not really there that thick. Maybe you like that. Maybe you like a more plot, action-driven story like this, and that's great. For me, in that field, it felt a little bit lacking. Again, we had the ending, the customary New Trek ending, where we have to come up with a name for it. When all the ships beam in at once to create this big dramatic moment. It happened in Discovery Season 2. It happened in Picard Season 1. Picard Season 2. It just keeps happening. This is like the 4th or 5th time this happened. We all line up and start shooting at each other, and we all beam in at the same time. And after like 5 or 6 times, I'm still supposed to be amazed by this. Come on, guys. This is, what is it? We're going to call it the beam-in ending. The multi-beam-in standoff ending, okay? Is it cooler the 5th time? Maybe you think so. But for me, I think I like the more pared down character intrigue endings that are kind of poignant and wrap things up. Insofar as we need a big set piece action adventure episode for the end of a season. Since when did that happen? When do we need to just end a season on such an amazing episode? You know, amazing visually. I don't know. I'm not a big fan. But I will say, as far as season endings go, this one left me with more good than bad. More questions answered than questions given. Number one thing is that it looks like we may have finally finished up the plot with Chris worrying about his future. I don't care. Maybe you care. I don't know why I'm supposed to care. I thought it was good to know the future, but I guess it's bad. And because this is Kirkland Trek, you can't do this alone. You need to let somebody in, Chris. You can't handle the emotional weight of this alone. Okay? Listen, we all sometimes have fate in life that we need to deal with together. If we try to live amongst the stars, we may feel that sometimes if we have our emotions well up inside, that we cannot then learn how to overcome our feelings and grow as a people. So we need to believe in the reality of the emotion that we feel now. That's what I hear whenever Chris talks about knowing his future. And indeed, Una says something to the effect of, Chris, you don't have to face this alone. I know we don't have to face this alone. If Chris was a thinking man, he would have just told everybody by now. But I guess it's good that he didn't, because if he did, he would have altered the future irrevocably. But there's no way he could have known that. We know that. He couldn't have known that until his future self came back with that time crystal. If he had known that, and he had done something bad earlier, would future Pike have come back in, like, Discovery Season 2? Why now? Again, don't get involved with time travel. Just don't do it. Time travel, not even once. Just remember that, guys. Don't do time travel. Not even one time. You do one time travel, you get addicted, and you can never go back. Okay? Before you know it, you're upside down in the ditch, choking on your own puke. That's what happens. You smoke one time travel, you're done. Okay? Well, what do you think I thought of this episode? I'm willing to say, give it the benefit of the doubt, and trust that we've come out of this better than we went in. It's better than half. It's not quite a 6. If this had been a fantastic Kirk, I would have easily went 6.57, but Kirk is letting it down for me. So I'm going to have to go 5.5. In terms of modern season endings for Star Trek, it's okay. This is a 5.5 for me. You know me, I know me. 5.5 is not completely terrible. To me, 5.5 means it's better than nothing. So, which that's par for the course for this season. It seems kind of, to me anyway, that it's better than nothing. That's how it's getting a 5.5. Now, we're done this season. You know what I like to do. We're going to play wrap up. Okay? Moving forward, I'm going to be trying to do a comment response video as the next video after this video in order to morph the comment response videos from being about a time frame to being about a season. Because I noticed that most comments are generated on a season basis. There's not many comments this cycle on episodes from a previous season. But if there is, I will include them as well. So therefore, you should be expecting comment response videos at the conclusion of every season. And also that way, it forces me not to let it grow too big. Last time I let it grow a little too big, and I ended up spending about 3 hours reading comments. And I think I broke my voice at the end of it. I'm not used to reading for 3 hours, if you can believe that. So, we're going to get comment response out of the way. Prodigy's coming up, I think. I think at the end of this year, we will be returning to Prodigy. That's good. I'm also looking at playing games. I'm looking at playing, what's that game? Star Trek Bridge Crew. I'm going to check that out. I'm going to see what's going on with that. Not making any promises. We'll see how well it runs on a computer from 2252. With compatibility and all that. I guess it's a very old game. But I like the classics, and I like you for sticking around. So, I'm Mark, and I usually don't say this in the average videos, but since this is a season ender, I usually will point this out, because I don't think you're stupid, and you know that when you should click like, and when you should click subscribe, and when you should click the bell. I don't have to say it in every video, so I save it at the end of a season for, a wrap-up, as it were, because you're not stupid, and I'm not stupid. So I'm not going to assume you're stupid and tell you every 5 seconds, but I'll tell you now. If you aren't subscribed, go ahead. If you don't click like, click like. If you hated it, click dislike. If you like clicking bells, you can actually click a bell. Did you know that? There's a bell you can click. You can click it for fun. I may go click it later. I'm Lieutenant Mark, and I'm going to see you when next I see you. Mark out.